Greetings, greetings, everyone. Yes, it is your girl, Linda Tellifer from the T. And yes, is what I usually say at this time of every month, either the first or third Tuesday, because all of you know that have been following me is my favorite time of the month. It is Being Brown at Work Live. And you can see here that I have another absolutely phenomenal guest. It's going to blow. Look, this month, I need all of y'all for real. You're going to have to seriously like I don't know if the kids or whatever the special going whatever's going on in your world right now, or if you're driving, you might need to pull over because this month is going to be everything. Because we are really going to peel back the onion. We're going to have a courageous, real conversation around a topic that those of you that look like us on this that deal with this on a regular basis, because this phenomenal woman has lived it and has courageously got on the other side of it. And I am so honored for Chenae Eckard to be my guest to talk about how we can get ourselves together. And it's not just us, but understanding how we can even work around the system that gets ourselves together so we can be on the other side and do what we need to do for ourselves in our career. Let me tell you a little bit more about this beautiful young woman. Chenae Eckard is originally from Camden, New Jersey. She earned a bachelor's degree from St. Augustine's University and a Juris Doctorate degree from North Carolina Central School of Law. After graduation, Chenae decided to pivot into human resources to become a recruiter. She landed her first recruiting role in higher education as a temp recruiter. While in higher ed, she was able to successfully convert into a full time recruiter in healthcare. During her time in healthcare, Chenae recruited entry, mid career, and senior level roles. She later pivoted into the tech recruiting, where she specializes in software engineers, program product managers, and cybersecurity professionals. And we all know just like in most industries, a lot of people do not look like us in the tech space, under other industries as well. But Shanae was in that industry recruiting at high levels. Along her journey, especially in healthcare, she picked up tips and tricks that will help job seekers make their search easier. Shanae is committed to helping the community learn networking techniques to catch the eye of recruiters and hiring managers while her job seeker resources, events, and individual sessions would take place. Shanae has grossed 133K plus followers across all social media platforms. She is highly respected within her community and has helped 200 plus people get interviews and job offers where they couldn't. Okay, I'm going to stop there. She helped them get job offers where they couldn't previously, ranging from 3K to 141K salary increases. She is a motivational speaker at her core, and a gift that she uses through spoken word is her spoken word poetry. She has published 3 books of poetry and continues to write as her goal is to help everyone heal as best they can. Her passion for advocacy and civil rights helps her cultivate relationships with diverse communities. Shanae empowers the minority community to go after what they think they can't have. Okay, I'm gonna pause there again. She empowers the community to go after what they think they can't have and uses herself as an example of having natural hair, being authentically yourself, and standing in the gaps of those who are voiceless. Outside of recruiting, Chenae Eckard is a motivational speaker, spoken word artist, author of 3 books of poetry. Chenae currently resides in Durham, North Carolina, with her husband, Terrence Eckard, and they have 2 dogs, Bane and Kodak. She believes her faith and spiritual maturity helps her speak life into her community. She lives by 2 scriptures. And I want to read these 2 scriptures because when I saw this in Shanae's bio, they resonated with me because one of the 2 of them I truly stand on, among others. So Philippians 4:6-7, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts, your minds in Jesus Christ. And then here's the one that I stand on, Romans 8:31. What then shall we say in response to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? And so, for those of you who are spiritual and walking, and I know a lot of you are that are in my audience, I had to make sure that I not only just said Philippians 4 6 through 7 or Romans 8:31, I had to read those because if you are a believer like myself and Chenae are, they are everything, not just in our personal journeys, but in our professional journeys. You guys know that I say who you are personally is who you are professionally. The two are connected. And I'm going to now open it up and welcome my awesome guest, Chenae Eckard, to Being Brown at Work Live. Welcome, Chenae.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Girl, I'm past excited. When I first got introduced to you and we had our discovery call, I mean, it was everything. And what I loved at the end of that discovery call is I got anointed Auntie Linda, which I'm like, I will take that in a heartbeat. I will take that. But Shanae, what I want to really kick off for the audience today is, I titled this "Get Me Together," and this is around just. I'm not going to go through everything that Shanae and I have talked about over the time that we've gotten to know each other. But what's so important about this month is that we're going to focus everyone on the fact that, yeah, we have challenges. There's microaggressions, there's racism, there's biases that exist. And Shanae has been gracious enough, and I have to say courageous enough, that she's going to share her journey of what that felt like in her career throughout, not just what the system presented to her. Okay. But let's get real. Sometimes we are in our own way. And so, Shanae, when we first met, I remember you were going through some things at that time and had responded to something that had built up in your workplace at the time. And I remember saying to you, "So, how's that work for you?" And it didn't work so well. So give my audience a little feel of who Shanae Eckert was at that time that we met several months ago, and what was going on in your world.
Yeah. So when you and I met, I was struggling a lot at work. Um, I was struggling so much that it bled over into my personal life. And for people who don't fully understand how your work can affect your mental health, you hear a lot of people say it's only a job, or you hear a lot of people say don't allow what you're going through at work to make it home and all the things. And we know those things, but we don't do it on purpose. It's not, the goal isn't to take work home and bring home to work, right? The goal is to make sure we're doing things separate. But I think what was happening for me was I was being watched so much at work that it was bleeding into my personal life, because I was also being watched in my personal life. And so it was difficult to think and to feel free, to a point where when you and I met, one of the things that I was struggling with was I was even scared to say certain things out loud, because I didn't know who was sending other people to watch me. And what I experienced was, I experienced being reported so much. I experienced being questioned so much and challenged so much that I started, like any person would start to crash out. And it got to a
Mm.
point where I literally was like, I actually, I actually said, and I laughed, because I laughed to keep from crying, because I said to someone one time, I understand why people commit suicide over their jobs.
Jesus.
Once
Wow.
I said that, once I said those words, and once I got there, I realized that something was wrong, because
Wow.
I had never imagined feeling like allowing my job to get me there, like, ever. And I used to think, how could people allow their jobs to have such an impact? But the thing is, you don't allow it to happen; it just does.
Yes,
It
yes.
you're not looking for you're not looking for someone or something to affect you in your personal life. It just kind of happens, and you don't
Yes.
realize it's happening until it's too late. And so for me, when you talk about how I responded, I had so many things built up, and I had held my tongue for so long that I got to a point where I was just like, I'm gonna say how I feel now, because
Yeah.
now I've gotten to a place where it's between me and you. and I'm gonna choose me every single time. I'm strong
Yeah.
enough to
Yeah. Yeah.
choose
Yeah.
me every single time. I love me too much not to voice my opinion or say anything and stand up for myself. And one where I was at that time was, so my husband and I are currently on our fertility journey, and I said to myself, if my unborn children, if I'm trying to get them to stand up for themselves, if my unborn children ask me, Mom, when you had the chance, did you stand up for yourself? And I tell them no,
Mm.
believe
Mm.
anything I say.
Mm.
Why should they believe anything I say? One of my mentors who taught me how to be a recruiter said, Chenae, you're not really doing nothing until you put your job on the line. And I didn't understand what that meant until I didn't realize that although I was not violating any policy, I was putting my job on the line for the things that I knew that God had called me to do and what I thought was right. And
Yeah.
so I cried a lot. I yelled a lot. I was frustrated a lot. I was mean. I was angry all the time. I had gotten to a point where I had taken a mental health leave of absence because I just couldn't do it anymore. And so
Yeah.
when I said the words, I understand why people commit suicide over their jobs. I sat with myself like I had felt like that, but to say it was liberating because I had been feeling like that for so long.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
Yes.
wasn't afraid to I wasn't afraid to admit it. So while I'm doing videos and I'm posting and I'm encouraging people and I'm going to conferences, I was dying on the inside. And
Wow.
I remember somebody looked at me and said, one of my former colleagues looked at me and was like, "You're not the same bubbly person you were. You're not the same. You're not like excited." And I said, "Because
Yeah.
this environment doesn't get that from me anymore." And so I had gotten to a place where they were killing my spirit.
And Shanae, and what I find so heartbreaking is that that colleague saw it, and I'm sure, and I don't know anybody you worked with, but I'm 100% sure that your leadership saw it, that everybody else saw the same thing that that colleague saw, but it was ignored. It was ignored. And I'm sharing this with you only because, and I'm letting you know, look, you were not alone. I know you've probably felt alone in that case. And when you
A
make
lot.
the statement, oh, I know. And when you make the statement that you understand why people commit suicide, but because of workplace trauma, that's because they feel alone. But I'm going to raise my hand and tell you, you are not, because I have experienced it. And it's amazing when people are like, they have this expectation of you being bubbly, of you being this, but nobody paused to
Of you
say,
being
should,
on and showing
are
up
you,
all the time. And
yes, yes, of you being on all the, but did anybody ask, are you okay? Is there something I could, or did anybody take responsibility for the fact that they may have been part of that environment that
so I'll say
created
no,
your,
yes, no, no. I'll
there
say
we are.
yes to are you okay? No to what can I do to help to stand in the gap for you?
There we are.
Because the thing is, there's a difference between standing in the gap and actually doing it.
Doing
Saying
so.
that you're going to do it and actually doing it. And
There
then
we
I
are.
had gotten to a point where I said, I think this experience, for some reason, only going to speak for Black women specifically because I'm a Black woman. Um, I kept saying to myself, and I said to someone else, I think this experience, every Black person, every Black woman will experience this at one point in their lives. Hopefully we don't, but by default, most of us do. And I said, this feels like a rite of passage for Black women.
Mm.
It sucks that it feels like that, but it just seems like so many people
Wow.
experience this either on a daily basis or at least one point in their lives that it almost felt like this is a rite of passage. Every Black woman is going to go through it because for some reason, when we ask questions and when we speak up for ourselves and we stand up for what we believe in, we have become aggressive, too confident, and a problem.
Yep. Boom. Boom.
And
Right there.
and I had
Right
got
there.
to this place where I was I was just like, I am not going to believe what you believe about me because my mom ain't raised me like that. And I don't even believe that about myself. I'm not a problem. I'm not too strong. I'm not too confident. I'm not any of those
Exactly.
things. If I say I'm the baddest recruiter walking, I believe that. If you say you're the baddest,
Yes.
if you say you're the baddest podcast host on the planet, you should believe that. It doesn't mean that other podcast hosts are not better than you or not as good as you or you're not on the same wavelength. It doesn't mean that
Right.
other recruiters are not great at what they do and we're not peers and all of that. And it does not mean that any of us are above reproach or being guided or coached or mentored in any way. It means we believe we are good at what we do. And you should
Exactly.
want someone on your team or working with you that has that level of confidence.
Yes, Chenae, bottom line, it is not a win loss situation, but they turn it into a win loss situation. I'm in the automotive industry, and for years, it has been, oh, you can't think you're better than. For years. Year. I love what I do. So therefore, I want to be excellent at what I do, and I'm excellent at what I do, and I believe in myself. Instead, but to your point, there's this mentality out there that says, okay, if you believe that, then somehow there's a win loss because you're minimizing me, in place of you, and it clearly has nothing to do with that. But if
That's
you
right.
flip it, everyone else is okay with saying, hey, I'm good. Look at me. Da, da. And everybody's like, yes. And they're applauding.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's where I completely can relate your the situation you dealt with that really just tore you inside, that says, look, I'm good at what I
That thing
do.
tore me apart. Like it
It tore
tore
you
me.
apart. Exactly. Because you're good
It
at what
tore me
you
apart.
do.
It tore me apart
Yeah.
so
And
much that I had gotten to a place where after work, I would just either sit in silence or I would be yelling for hours. And I had gotten to a point where I was just like, I have no joy in, and I love what I did. I loved what I did. I loved it. But the job became more of a burden than the passion
yes.
of helping others.
Yes.
And I had gotten to a point where I was like, I had the thought of if I'm not here anymore, it'll all go away at the same time.
Mm.
And
Mm, mm,
so,
mm, mm.
but the thing is, I'm strong enough not to do the act, right? But
Yes.
I said
True.
to myself, but I'm also strong enough to also understand there are people outside of work who love me. I love myself, and work is not your life. So I had to tell myself, work is not your life. Your loved ones love you. After you are no longer at this job, your loved ones will still love you. And work is not
Right.
going to be your life after here. You don't have to necessarily think about it.
Yes.
But I think
Yes,
what
yes,
I
yes.
found is that PTSD, when you're diagnosed with it, it shows up randomly and it shows up in different ways. And I've
Yes.
had to constantly work through it all the time because I want to make sure that I'm not taking the baggage of the trauma that I experienced onto any future opportunities.
Absolutely. And that's so key. So Shanae, if we really kind of just, for the next few minutes or so, really dig in a little bit more into that. So we understand that the environment was toxic, and the environment did not support you being strong, confident woman and showing up in your excellence. But were there any portions of that Shanae owned? And did you come to any realization of where you played a part? And now you have done that reflection, that self reflection, and have worked on that part of Shanae that you owned, systemic piece aside.
Absolutely. So I own how I responded.
Mm,
Because I didn't have to allow them to take me out of character. I didn't have to allow them to um, for my response. I could have, for me, I could have not said anything. But I think human nature says if you're being punched in the face constantly and you're not doing anything, you're going to have bruises that are almost extremely difficult to hide and make
Yeah,
invisible. And I
sure.
said to myself, it's time to fight back. Like I'm tired now. I can't. I come from a family of Black Panthers. I found out one of my
Mm,
uncles was a Black Panther not too long ago, and
mm,
I was like, it's time for me to stand up for myself. And so, I think any of us can own how we might have responded to a person,
sure.
whether we're talking to them or whether we're chatting via email or in a chat in any way. What I own is you did not have to allow anyone to take you out of your character, and
Yes.
you didn't have to allow them to have authority over your personality.
And what I
That's what I.
often say, yeah, and in doing so, you allow them to write the narrative, right?
Yeah.
Because I often tell the people, even on, that work for me over the years at various companies I've been at, and even in my business that I coach, you want to be in control of the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
That is the most important thing. Don't allow anybody else to write your narrative. And just based on what you shared, how the reaction, if you're not in control of it and you allow them to drive you to a place that is out of character, they have then become the authors of the narrative
Mm-hmm.
around Chenae Eckard or around Linda Talaferro, which is
Absolutely.
something we clearly don't want to do. Is it easy? Absolutely not. To your point, I mean, we're human. We're human.
Mm-hmm.
Although they may not see us as that, we fundamentally are, and there's only so much we can take. But allowing them to control the narratives of it, absolutely no, no. You have to be in complete control.
Mm-hmm.
Chenae, what you and I talked about this part too. And I swear I can't stand, sometimes I can't stand the clock because I'm seeing that we are like close to 7 at Eastern Standard Time. 30 minutes is just crazy. And, we do this thing for 30 minutes, part one, part two. And I don't want to get into the tips and, all the wonderful stuff that you're going to provide in the next session. But what I don't want to do is just close without giving you an opportunity to share. Look, any parts of yourself that you want to leave with the audience so that they know, because I know that I've got an audience that can relate to where you've been, and I want them to understand that they're not alone, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
want them to somehow understand that although it may, when they're looking in the mirror, they may say, wait a minute, something's wrong with who I see and what's going. Can you share a little bit about your experience and what you've learned so far before, when we come back together in a couple of weeks, you'll get the tips and tools. But can you share with them in your final comments just a message that lets them know, look, you're not crazy. I'll turn it over to you in your words.
Yeah. So you are not crazy. I'll start there. You are
Yes.
not crazy because how you feel is valid. What you're
Mm,
experiencing at work or wherever in whatever environment that you're in that you find it difficult to get out of, it's valid. And it's valid because it's yours. Right?
yes. Yes.
I think what's interesting is that when you go into these work environments or these workspaces, the idea is that you're supposed to conform to the
Mm,
space, the rules, the standards, the policies, right? That's fair because there are rules in place for a reason. I think what happens though is it's when you start allowing your identity to be tied to what you're doing in your job.
mm,
And so for me, that was my struggle. My struggle was my identity was not tied to what I was doing with my job. And I want to tell the person who's listening that if you're thinking about jumping off a bridge, take a step back. Because the thing is, if you give up now, because there were many times where I would ask God like come on, like you gotta be kidding me. Why? So much so that I put it on my prayer wall behind me because
mm,
I couldn't figure out what am I doing wrong? Why me? And I was in a very woe is me. mentality and mindset for a long time.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
want people to know that when you're in that rock bottom, because I felt like I was in this rock bottom place where everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, you're thriving, you're doing great," and all the things. I was slowly dying on the inside. So for
Wow.
the person who feels that way, just know that your feelings are valid. I've also heard this from more than black people. I've heard the worst experiences from black people, but I've heard some pretty bad experiences from other nationalities as well. And I
Yes,
want
yes.
people to know, I want people to know and to understand that it's okay to stand up for yourself. For me,
Absolutely.
I knew I was doing it the right way. You might not have liked how I said it, but I'm going to say it now. And I'm going to
Mm,
say it now because I not only am I commanding the attention of the room that I walk into, but I'm also teaching you that you are not allowed to treat me a certain kind of way or talk to me a certain kind of way just because you believe I'm your subordinate. We are all under the
wow.
same heaven. We are all under the same heaven, and we are all people at the end of the day. The difference in how we treat each other is the fact that all of us as people gave each other titles. And so for me, I've always said that I am not just like the Lord, I am not a respecter of persons. I don't talk to Linda just because she may be a senior director at a thing or a vice president at a thing. I talk to Linda like Linda because she's a person. So
There
I
we
don't
are.
subscribe to I'm supposed to straighten up just because you walk into a room because you HR. Yeah, you're a person just like me. And if I know I'm not, and if I know I am on the ball and I'm not necessarily doing anything wrong, then I don't have to straighten up because I'm not doing anything wrong. So
There we are.
for the person who feels like there is a monkey on your back that you cannot let loose, just understand that that monkey is only there because you are valuable. That monkey is only there because you are powerful. That monkey is only there because you are confident. That monkey is only there because for some reason you have a light inside of you that no one can understand. How are you carrying this light even if you have to walk on water?
Wow.
I have to fully understand the idea that I walk into every single room I walk into, I command the attention of that room. And if for some reason someone has a problem with that, they're going to try to dim or minimize the light that was placed on the inside of me before I can speak my first words. So I am not interested. I had to understand that as pissed off as I was not interested in dimming my light because my assignment was to my community. And if my
Mm,
assignment my community, I kept telling myself, if you stand on judgment day and God asks you why, what is a good answer for God? I had to tell somebody that I reported to, if God asks me why, I cannot say because you said I can't.
mm.
I can't say that. And it comes from this place of all you're doing is telling me everything I'm doing wrong, but you're not giving me the explanation behind the rule as to why it's wrong.
Right, it's wrong.
Right?
Yes.
So if I can say something to the person, just know if you got balls, you got to stand on that.
Yes.
Because if you don't, every single work environment that you go into, you will literally be a yes man, and you will literally allow them to walk all over you when at the given moment they can let you go,
And the
even
heartbeat,
and call it a layoff or call it something that they want to call it. They can
whatever
let
they
you
want to call it.
at the end of the day, they can let you go quickly. The thing is, though, I want you all to understand every single situation you deal with at work, you're not going to deal with it perfectly. Every single one. Executives don't, higher leadership managers don't, individual contributors, they don't either. The idea behind standing up for yourself is, if to be honest, I'll tell somebody, if you got to crash out, do it, get it out. Just know that if you do it, you are planting a seed of this person is too influential. If you do it, just know that if you need to stand on business, just know that that comes at a cost. I used to say to people, and I still do, being black, a black woman in corporate America and standing up for yourself comes at a cost. You have to decide if that's a cost you can
If
afford.
that's the cost you want to pay, there you are.
And
Yes.
for me, if it's ever a situation where it's between me and an environment, I'm going to choose me every single time. So every
Yeah.
single time, I'm going to be able to afford that cost, especially if God called me to it.
Yes. And that's the decision that has to be made. And I'm so glad, Chenae, that you mentioned other ethnicities, because I can tell you that from my experience over my 40-year career, yeah, we as Black women deal with it on a higher percentage, but there's others that deal with it every single day as well. And
Mm-hmm.
so, this message goes to them as well. I'm so glad that you mentioned exactly what you said towards the end of this, Shanae, because before we get to part two in a couple weeks, the level of clarity that you just gave just now has to be present within the individual before they can take the steps and tips that you're going to give in a couple of weeks. Because if you don't have that level of clarity about what you bring into the room and about your value and your worth, then you and I can talk all day long about take this step and this step. None of that's going to manifest itself if you do not have what she just said, that level of clarity and understanding about who you are as a person and what you bring into that room. Because we all
I want,
command the
yeah, the
rooms.
thing is, that I want people to know, though, I want y'all to know, I want to give you all permission that it is okay to feel at work.
Mm,
Like,
mm.
I want to give y'all permission to know I cried so much at work. Like, yo, I cried so much. And while I'm encouraging, I'm normally, what would happen is I would literally post in tears because I told myself I still have a job to do.
Mm.
I still have to do the job, and I'm going to kill it every single time. Even if people don't believe that I'm killing it, I believe it. So I'm going to do it every single time, regardless of how I feel, because I knew that this assignment was not light. I knew this. The Bible says, "For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." But I knew that, in addition to that scripture, I knew that the burden is light because God is helping me with it.
Mm.
It
Mm.
just feels heavy. And so I had to keep saying, I had to keep asking, like, why? Like, what am I doing wrong? What did I do? How did I go from being really excited to calling crisis on a Saturday at 3 o'clock in the morning?
Wow.
How did I get there? So I want to give people permission to feel, because
Yes.
your feelings are valid. If you need to
Yes.
cry, please get it out. If you need to
Yes.
yell, please get it out. Do I encourage anyone to crash out? No, but if you do it, it's valid. Because, to
Hmm.
be honest, I care more about people and my own mental health than I did about a job.
Yeah.
I care so much
Yes.
more about it because I wasn't interested in anyone controlling my voice.
Yes.
We have the very first thing we have as soon as we come out the womb is our voice, because we cry, because we let.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
want people to understand that it is okay. It's okay to feel, and it's okay to let it out. But y'all have to know that with Recruiter Cousin or Miss Linda or anyone who has a brand, just know that that comes with a cost.
Past.
Helping our community comes with a cost.
Yes.
We have to know that, and so to understand that when we decide to help you, it's because we've been called to. Right, this isn't about followers, this isn't about engagement. We've been called to help y'all, so that calling comes with sacrifice. In order to get to the sacrifice, you have to be obedient first. So I had to be obedient and to know what God had called me to. And I had to keep saying that if God is for me, who could be against me? I had to keep saying, Chenae, be anxious for nothing. I had to keep saying that because I was losing my mind at work every day. And I had to keep saying, it's okay to feel, it's okay to be, and it's okay to still be successful while you're crying. But just know
Yes.
when it's time for a break. And I had to take my break because I was literally losing my mind. And I told myself, you're losing your mind because you've been called to something. So now
Yes.
so in the midst of you losing your mind, give your mind to God and to people who can help you balance. So
Exactly.
I had to constantly do that. So I just want all of you to know that you are not alone, that it is okay, and I want to give you permission to feel, and that if you're being treated a certain kind of way at work, it is not right. It's
Bottom
not.
line.
It is
Bottom
not
line.
right. You decide on how you respond. My responses weren't always the best, but I kept telling myself, I'd be damned if anyone who is not someone that I did not know before my start date make me feel like shit.
Yeah.
I felt like crap all the time. So just know that greater is coming. You will make it to the other side, but in the meantime, I just want to give y'all permission to feel because it's really
Yes.
important for our health.
And it's extremely important for our mental health. Chenae, look, and I can hear either Bane or Kodak in the back. I have a dog, so when look, if they're look, it's amazing how our four-legged furry family members have a connection to us. I don't know if that's a connection to you and the emotion and the feel through the wall or the door, but I can hear them in the background. But I know I. This is why I couldn't wait to get to August. I couldn't wait to get to your sessions in August because of what I knew you would bring to my audience. And that is unabashed, unadulterated, completely raw realness that we are just not courageous enough to share and show. And so and although we live it every single day in our 9 to 5, so I can't not express how much I appreciate you for bringing to my audience your experiences, your journey, the how you felt and how it impacted your life, both personally and professionally, and how they are connected, which I say all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I am so honored that you felt my podcast, me, Linda Talaferro, Being Brown at Work, worthy enough to come on and share from your heart. And I can't wait for 2 weeks from now when you share how you got on the other side. And I'm telling y'all, you don't want to look. If you're catching this on the replay, good for you. If you're getting it live, yes, you needed to get it live. But you don't want to miss 2 weeks from now because this woman, in the midst of all the madness that's going on in this industry and in our government, went from one situation into another. She did not let whatever was thrown in her way prevent her from showing up in her authentic self and moving into yet another role. So whatever the people that think their powers that be will tell you out here, they're not in control. And if you're spiritual like Chenae and I, and you have a belief, we know who's in control. But we have to do the work necessary. And this is the young woman that's going to share with you in 2 weeks the work that she did, the tips and steps. She's a recruiter cousin with a hell of a following for a reason. And if you've not connected with her on LinkedIn, you want to connect with her yesterday. Y'all need to be recruiter, find her. Chenae Eckard out there for IG, everywhere. She everywhere. LinkedIn. She's got. I mean, the digits of following are there for a reason because she knows what she's talking about. She knows that she knows. Chenae, it's been an honor and a pleasure. I cannot wait for 2 weeks from now. Thank you so much for joining me
Of
today.
course. Thank you so much for having